Hello and welcome to the Real Talk with the Unicorn. My name is Tatiana Lazareva. I am a recruiter and principal at Unicorn Experts, supply chain and logistics recruitment firm. In our today's conversation, we will discuss how Canadian supply chain job market responds to the global trends and reflects our own domestic challenges. We will talk about job search stories. You will hear advice. So if you're passionate about supply chain, stay with us, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. I'm so excited. I cannot wait to introduce my first guest, Niraj Singh. Niraj is a supply chain and project management certified professional with over 14 years of Canadian and international experience amongst Fortune 200 companies. Niraj is a category demand and supply planner with Nestle. Also, Niraj is an executive member on steering committee and a guest speaker with supply chain bridging program for internationally trained immigrant professionals at Humber College. So Niraj, welcome.
Thank you, Tatiana. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So if you are actively looking for a job, I'm sure the experience of our second guest will be very helpful. I'm happy to introduce Siddharth Mehta. Siddharth shared his recent successful job search experience. Siddharth is currently a logistics coordinator with Boston Scientific, and like many of you, Siddharth is passionate about the art of supply chain and logistics, loves reading, numbers, helping his peers, and also Siddharth is a graduate of Humber College. Welcome, Siddharth.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. Thank you for a wonderful introduction. I'm looking forward for the meeting. Yeah.
Thank you, Siddharth. And my final guest, Gauri Agrawal. Gauri is an enthusiastic logistics professional with over 6 years of international freight forwarding, logistics sales, and pricing experience. Gauri holds a spot on Dean's honor list for supply chain management at Humber College. Gauri loves supply chain and is actively looking for her next opportunity. Welcome, Gauri. I'm happy to see you as well.
Thank you so much for wonderful introduction.
Gauri, I'm glad, and also I would like to invite you to be the first one to answer my questions. So I know that you are actively looking for a job, and as you can imagine, a lot of people who are watching us, they are at some point considering a change, or they may be like yourself, actively searching for an opportunity. How do you feel? What do you see in the market? And tell us a little bit about your job search experience.
So I will start with one sentence. The market is very confusing right now. Like it is. I've been looking on LinkedIn and on Indeed and those platforms about the jobs because I'm here as a fresher and I don't know anyone, to be honest. Like I have no reference and nothing. So Canadian market depends on reference, what I have learned so far. If you don't have any reference or you don't have such elite networking, you cannot get into the market. That's what I am facing my challenges. Now about the now when you are asking about how I am searching, so well, I'm going on LinkedIn and I'm going on Indeed, and there were I'm checking the job post and I'm applying there. So you see the expectations of the company, like what job profile they are sharing with their, for what they are hiring us for. So one recent incident I would like to share. I got selected for the third round. Like, so I passed 2 rounds already. So the manager, I had my first round with the HR. So the HR was very happy. Then I had the second round with the manager. So he was very sure that I will be hired. He was like, the next round will be the CEO, and I'm pretty sure that they will hire you. You are like the exact person fit for this role. So the role was for overseas sales specialist, which is the same thing what I have done in my previous as my previous title. So I was very excited. So for 2 days, I was like completely like a maniac. I was like waiting for in the schedule that, oh my God, I'm gonna get hired, and this is such a wonderful thing. And then when I had my conversation with the CEO, He did not ask me anything about the logistics. He did not ask me anything about the job profile, the thing that he was talking about completely finance, payrolls. And I was like, how does like payroll fits in, you know, in sales, like in overseas sales, especially in freight forwarding? So that was very confusing. Like the job profile that they posted was completely got changed at the end of the round. So I understood at that point that they were not hiring. So this is what we are seeing in the market right now, you know. You see there are a lot of jobs available, there are a lot of posting about the jobs, but there is no job actually. So it's kind of like heartbreaking at some point.
Okay, I understand, Gauri. Thank you very much for being honest with us, for sharing your experience. I know that for people who are in the same situation, it's very important to know that they're not alone. So just by sharing your experience, you're providing support and positive reinforcement to those who may be about to give up or maybe to change their career aspirations. You mentioned network, and specifically you mentioned elite network. I have examples when the first job was basically the result of applications. And in order to help you, I have Siddharth and Niraj here so that they can share their successful job search stories and maybe give ideas to our listeners. And Siddharth, since you are a fresh grad yourself from Humber College and you successfully landed your job in logistics, I know that your role is slightly different from what Gauri is looking for. Please share with us your insights, your experience, and maybe you will reassure Gauri in her views, and maybe you can give some positive vibes to her.
Sure. So yeah, as Gauri said, I was in the same situation where Gauri is right now. 3 months back when I met Tatiana. So actually, I met Tatiana. She came as a guest speaker in Humber College. So all of my friends took advice from her, and when the chance was mine to take an advice from her, there was no brainer that I would go to her and seek advice related to my resume and how to build it. So initially, I started building my resume. What I did was, like, nowadays ChatGPT is like the buzzword, right? So what I did was, I just, whatever I did in my back home, my experience was as an inventory and logistics coordinator back home. So I didn't think about it once that I just thought about what ATS goes through and what everything goes through, and just put up my experience there on the chat GPT, and it made my resume. So I was happy with that. I thought that I'll land a job, I have the experience, right? But when I met Tatiana, and she told me that you should write what you've actually done in the job, right? So I think that made a very big change in my resume, I would say. And I think that pretty much helped me in getting my first interview. I wouldn't say I got it many interviews, but like the first interview I got was like pretty good. The company I'm working with, and yeah. So the position was logistics coordinator, which I'm working right now. And I got this job around. I started looking for a job around 3 months before my graduation date. So somewhere around September, I started looking for jobs, and I landed my first interview in the month of November 1st or 2nd. And yeah, and during around 29th or 28th November, I was having the offer letter in my hand. So I think that's pretty big thanks to Tatiana for helping me in building my resume. And pretty much that, just focusing on your interview, your interpersonal skills, your soft skills. I think that makes a really big difference. And staying true to what you've done in the past, just not telling any lies in the interview, I think that also plays a very major part. For example, in my interview, I was asked about whether you've dealt with air freight, or whether you've dealt with FDA or any government agencies. I didn't do that, right? So I bluntly said that I don't know about it, because I knew that if I had said yes, they would have expected that I know these things, and they would have trained me in the company. So yeah, I think staying true to what you've done actually, I think that also plays a major role in that. So need not worry. I think just keep applying. That's what my say is. Rest, I don't want to say it, but still luck plays a difference. But it's just that once you get that opportunity of an interview, I think you can crack it. if you have good interpersonal skills and soft skills, and obviously technical skills.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your experience and also highlighting the importance of having the right resume, because a resume is the opening point. It's your label. It has to clearly say what you're capable of and what your strengths are. So Gauri, in your case, if you had experience as a freight forwarding specialist, sales specialist, it may be a good idea to diversify your experience and try applying for logistics coordinator or pricing analyst. Research those jobs and try to see how they correspond with your experience. Maybe create another resume or change your resume, but don't give up. So I think our next guest, Niraj Singh, will definitely share some useful advice with you, because Niraj has been successfully building his career here in Canada and definitely can add a few things about soft skills and, of course, his own personal experience landing the first job in Canada. Niraj, you're welcome.
So my journey started in May 2018 when I came in Canada. I took about 4 months to get a job. And during that 4 months, I had roughly about, I think, 20 interviews. And those 20 interviews were with the best in the business. Like the day when I landed, after that second day, I think the third day when I landed, I had a call from, I would not name the company, but Canada's largest pharma company. But what went wrong was, which I realized after a couple of interviews, that I quoted a very high salary. I did not know what to quote. I was very excited, and that's where I learned over the years, like, how to quote and how to come across the recruiters. One thing which I learned over the years is supply chain is a wonderful field, because I didn't happen to bump into supply chain by accident, which most of the people do. I chose supply chain because I was initially part of the IT industry earlier. And while I was working in the IT industry, I worked for a specific client. And when I worked for that client, I was put on a supply chain project. I never knew about supply chain, anything. And then once I got through learning about supply chain is from an IT business point of view, I thought of why not getting your hands dirty in the hardcore supply chain field. And that's what excited me in supply chain. I'm talking about 10 years back. So after that, I worked with a lot of multinational companies. And the best part was that when I worked with a lot of multinational companies, I get a lot of exposure. You get exposed to world-class systems. And and in Canada, when I came, so I worked for a beverage company earlier for a couple of months. And after that, I think the opportunity with Nestle happened. And this has been my longest tenure with any company in my career. And this has been the most wonderful, I would say, because Nestle is one of those companies which has a broad portfolio, and it gives you a lot of learning opportunities across categories, across functions. And I think supply chain is one of those rare cross-functional, I would say, domains or cross-functional teams who get the chance to bridge gaps across a lot of functions, specifically finance, because supply chain still largely is considered as a cost center in many companies. It will take some time to be a profit center, but still it is considered as a cost center. When you say that it's as a cost center, it has a direct correlation with a lot of your finance colleagues. So I think specifically if you talk about logistics, so it has a lot of handling, distribution, all those costs built in. So till the time you have that, you have a lot of concepts of turnaround time and cash to conversion cycle periods. So all those things, when you talk about largely in supply chain, it has to be a cost center. So my way of looking at going at interviews, if I want to just recommend to someone who, like, if I want to recommend myself 5 years back, what I would say is, bridge your link or try to correlate things between supply chain, finance, because these two functions are tightly knitted. And these two functions impact the balance sheet as well as the profit and loss statement a lot, which means, it actually impacts your business objective. So supply chain is something which is knit with finance, and then finance again is the whole and soul of how your business runs. So if we just talk about, let's say, fill rates, working capital, forecast accuracy, bias, these terms directly or indirectly impact your cost objectives of a company, which in fact impacts your bottom line and also the top line in terms of product availability.
Okay, Niraj, thank you very much for this valuable advice. I agree with you. Supply chain is a highly cross-functional area, and especially these days when companies are so focused on reducing their expenses, or they are trying to optimize their headcount, and people end up being exposed to different areas of business. Of course, feeling confident and learning from your colleagues, it's very important. And also, I want to make sure that when you go for an interview, you look at it from the perspective how my experience can help company grow, what objectives company is following, what are the KPIs, how they measure success, so that you can do your own value proposition in a way that they see how you can help them grow business and grow company and bring more clients. So definitely that is useful. And speaking of background, you mentioned, Niraj, that you had IT background. In supply chain, you will run into a lot of engineers, people with financial background. I know that we need to know certain tools in order to be selected for the job. And different areas of supply chain require different skills and different level of knowledge. So I would like to ask each of you about tools and systems that you use and that you think are essential for your niche.
I think the most important skill, I think, as a logistic coordinator, if you go to any interview, they would ask you is how good is your Excel skills, right? So I think you have to focus. You have to focus on your Excel skills. I think that plays a very major part. Now I'm working in the industry. I know that Excel plays a very important part. Apart from that, Power BI tools. I was familiar with it, but I never had an hands-on experience with Power BI. Talking about the ERP systems. So earlier we used to have in my company Epicore, but they were going into transition, and now we are integrated into SAP. So SAP, I've learned it at Humber, but I same as Power BI, I didn't have any hands-on experience working with SAP. So yeah, it's a good learning. But one skill that you should definitely have is you should master your Excel skills. That I would say.
I agree with you, Siddharth. Excel is one of those things we ask for in any role within supply chain. And of course, we're looking at advanced Microsoft Excel skills, which includes different Boolean logic formulas, text functions, VLOOKUP, macros, pivot table, those things. You have to be able to use those in order to succeed in supply chain and feel confident. Gauri, moving to you and talking about the technical aspects of the job of logistics coordinator, logistics salesperson, what skills did you use in the past and what skills you see are in demand for those roles right now?
So if we talk about technical skills, as Siddharth said, in the industry, we do have to brush up our skills on Excel, and which I especially used as well. Um, Coming from Turkey, where I have worked for more than 4 years, we are not that tech savvy that we have to have expensive softwares like SAP. SAP is a very expensive software. Not every company can buy it, and we used to have what we call as CargoWise, which is also which is mostly for freight forwarding. I would rather say it's mostly for transportation. So we used to use CargoWise, and as sales are we are not really into softwares. We did not get that opportunity to get our hands dirty with expensive softwares. But Excel is something that we have to keep maintained, because we have to keep our records, like what we sold a weekly basis, or how much inquiries did we generated. So those are the things that we used for Excel, like basically Excel and again PowerPoint presentations, because we are meeting our clients. We have to give presentations to them. We have to explain the company expectations. Then even for budgetary purposes, when we have meetings internally in a board tables, we have to share our presentation skills more. So that is there. For sales, I would rather, for sales, it's mostly how you present and convince your clients, right? So it's majorly about your soft skills.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm glad you mentioned CargoWise. I hope that is on your resume because CargoWise is the keyword that many 3PL organizations are searching by, because that software is quite popular in Canada among freight forwarders. Make sure you use that as your competitive advantage, as your strength, and I hope it will help you land your job. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Niraj, and moving to you, I know that you had IT background and right now you work in a supply chain planning position. So what tools, and specifically maybe what data management tools do you use? And what would you recommend those who are looking for ways to improve themselves? What tools to study maybe? Thank you.
I think I'll bucket that down into 3 sections. So one is a tool, or let's say a software which you'll use for data analysis. So in Canada, we use a lot of Excel, and I would say advanced Excel rather than a normal Excel. The second one would be a visualization tool, something which Siddharth said, let's say Power BI or Tableau, for example. And then the other one would be an ERP system. Now, ERP, you already have an SAP, like in planning, if you see, you have an APO, and then you have different module between that. But now what is happening is the future is going more towards scenario planning. That is something which is gaining more traction in the supply chain world. Because after the pandemic, due to fortunate or unfortunate incidences, supply chain has gained a lot of attention, specifically in the, at the C executive level of every company. So supply chain is being talked more now compared to what it was before the pandemic. And when supply chain is being talked more, they want to highlight like how can you de-risk your supply chain more and more. And when you talk about de-risking supply chain, you get into scenario planning. What if this happens? What if that happens? So scenario planning, feeding in a lot of inputs and expecting a desired output, or asking the machine to give a desired output, that is something which is the way forward. And that's where machine learning and artificial intelligence and algorithms come into the picture. So some companies who are, for example, Amazon, I guess, is using very hard. I think they use a very hard level of algorithms to understand what consumers would buy next. So depending on the industry and depending on the dynamics of the sector in which every supply chain focuses on, the demands might vary, but I would bucket them into 3 things. One is an analysis tool, one is a visualization tool, and the other one would be let's say, an enterprise system.
Thank you, Niraj. I'm glad you mentioned that, because risk assessment for supply chain is essential, and ability to explore various options and predict outcome is one of those. I mean, critical thinking is what we're looking in our candidates, and that's what my clients are asking for. They need people who can take initiative, who can take responsibility, who can share and estimate risk. So definitely we are looking at skills, tools, and also a mindset here. Niraj, I know that you are certified, you're a CSCP certified PMP, and oftentimes I get questions from candidates about certification. Is it important to get certified in Canada in order to grow within the industry, or is it helping you? What are your thoughts around certification and getting credentials?
I think there are 2 answers to it. So first answer is, if you don't have a job, then delay the certification and get a job first, because job may lead to your certification. Certification may or may not lead to your job. Certification, if you see in most of the description, they bucket it as nice to have. It's not mandatory most of the times. And in multinational, it becomes very common because, maybe your hiring manager is also certified, let's say from Apex or ASCM or SCMAO on these, these well-known organizations. So he or she would also want their reportee or their team to be certified, because when you're saying that you're certified with a certain organization or a certain association, you have met certain standards. So they don't need to retrain you on those. And if you have an army of such people already in the industry across companies, then they are, they are deemed to be the best in terms of learning practices, and they've adapted to the environment well, and they're helping the business grow and improve further. But I would say it depends. Like, for example, in logistics, it's different, right? You have CITT, which is a major one when it comes to logistics. And then I guess that's the major one which you have here. You have CIFA also. But CIFA is more into freight forwarding and the cargo related stuff of shipping. And then if you want to get into procurement, then there is SCMAO. Apex or ASCM, which is commonly known now, it's a broader organization and it gives you a lot. I think CPIM, which I guess you already have it. So CPIM, CSCP, CLTD, all these certifications are there. But I would say for a new immigrant who comes in, if you are certified, it's good. If you are not, then like don't don't try to focus only on that. If you can with a job, that's well and good. Like if you get certified while you're having a job, that's well and good. But in case if you're looking for a job, get that, and then maybe certifications can wait.
I agree with you in terms of waiting to get certified
Yeah.
in your first job, because some employers, they even offer tuition reimbursement, so you can take advantage of that. And of course, when you get a job offer, look at it as a combination of benefits, whether or not they offer tuition reimbursement. Don't just look at the number. Assess the whole package, look at the company and what you will be learning there. It's important. And I want to add that you don't have to be certified, but you can certainly attend various networking events organized by SCMA, ASCM, and CITT, CIFA. It will give you more ideas about career options. You will get to speak with real people and you can learn from their own experience. You can network. Who knows? I always say, don't expect to land your job when you're going to a networking event. Don't set your expectations that high, but stay open-minded, ask questions, learn from people, and make sure that you come across as someone who's interested in them rather than someone who's trying to impress and appear interesting. So that's the rule. And speaking of networking, I know that when Gauri started sharing her experience and frustration, Gauri mentioned networking as the most essential part. I would say it's important, but you don't have to give up because your network is not big enough. So what are your thoughts about networking? So Siddharth, let's start with you. How do you see networking in Canada and how do you do networking?
The main difference I've noticed here in this Canadian market is LinkedIn plays a very crucial role. If you have a good LinkedIn profile, I would not say that it will lead you to a job, but it sort of gives you a confidence when you're competing against all the individuals right in the market competing for the same job, right? Networking, I think it's an important thing to do here. For example, I attended many networking events which were organized by Humber College. I attended like 2 or 3 networking events. I was looking for a job, but it was like early stages, so I was due with my course to finish. But still, I went there to learn which all companies come to networking events, what all is the atmosphere around there, and how do I connect with people there, what should I talk with them, right? So for example, I was not interested in procurement, but one such networking event, I was meeting this individual, and that changed my mind a bit, that okay, so, this sector is also very interesting. I know I can do good in this sector. So I think networking is a good tool here. I would suggest that going to networking events makes a good difference. And in addition to that, networking on LinkedIn, sending it as a personal note to anyone, to an individual whom you want to connect, it makes a difference.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned, Siddharth, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned networking on LinkedIn. As I see it, it also means supporting someone's posts, commenting on something that resonates.
Exactly.
Of course, staying professional, definitely supporting your peers. Networking does not always mean vertical networking. When you only reach out to those who are executives who seem to be decision makers, you can reach out to your peers, you can reach out to people who are currently holding the job that you want and ask them about their journey, and maybe someone will recommend you because you're a good friend and they know that you're looking for a job. So that's important. Gauri, speaking about networking, what do you do to expand your network right now? What tools do you use and how do you do that?
First, I'll say the same point as Siddharth said, that Humber College have those programs where you can learn a lot about networking, because in Canada, it is one of the crucial part of your career. So, and I would not only say for career, but also for building your own, personal, for your own personal growth also. Um, so Humber have these programs where we can meet people from our industries. Like we recently had our industrial tour. So we went there, we met them personally, the managers. So that's how we are meeting them, and then we are exchanging LinkedIn's, like how I saw you in a guest lecture, same as Siddharth. That's how I get connected with you, Tatiana. So we send whenever we send a request to someone on LinkedIn, we do add a personal note, because the person who is receiving our request does not know us. So how would they accept? They don't have that much time that they will go on your profile and just read everything about your job profile, or what you did, you did not do. So sending a personal note, as Siddharth said, is a very good point. I also remember one of the point that Nimish said from our session when we had Tatiana. He said something that we try to build such a formal networking in which we do forget the personal touch sometimes. So he mentioned that you also build your connections outside the formal world. You go with your connections, just invite them for a coffee, go that. I did that, and touch wood, like I have some good connections now. That's how I'm building, because if you keep asking them for reference, or you keep asking them for things that you need from them, that's not how you're gonna build. As you said, it's not always vertical. So yeah.
Gauri, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad you continue expanding your network, because you can always benefit from your network later in your career. Network before you need it. That's what they say about networking, and support each other. Niraj, I want to ask you, since you've been in Canada for a while and you see professional development, what role networking plays in your life, in your
I
career?
think networking is quite crucial, because you might be having a lot of certifications, you might be happy where you're, but the networking helps you grow. Maybe not for a job, you might be knowing different people, you might learn from their experiences early, because what I feel is experiences are mistakes or achievements. So if you learn mistakes which anyone has done 10 years ago, in now, you are more smarter than them. And how do you learn from them? Once you have an in-person touch, or let's say through LinkedIn, what Gauri was saying. What I've seen is like SEMAO, for example. I want to point out that organization, and I appreciate the fact that they do something which is called as coffee chats. So coffee chat has been a very, I would say, informal way of meeting people. What they've done is they've formalized that, and they do coffee chats chapter wise, like depending on, let's say, North York, Hamilton, Mississauga, Toronto, Scarborough. They have different small chapters, and they do it, I guess, first Tuesdays or first Wednesdays of every month. So that's a good place to meet people, because who will come there will only be a SCMO certified guy or a lady. So they are procurement and largely supply chain professionals. So you are actually going to a meeting which is in a way informal, but then you're meeting, industry professionals there. So that's a good setup which they've done. The second thing which I would look at networking is, because my way of looking at networking and interview is only one, that there is a problem, or there is an issue in the company, and that's the reason there's a vacancy. And you should pitch yourself as a solution to that problem. So even if you are in interview, or even if you are networking with someone, if you get a chance, ask them like, what are your current problems in the company? Maybe in your past, you might have solved them in your earlier companies, so you directly have an answer. In case if you don't have an answer, you should be fast or quick enough to think of options at that point of time and suggest them something. Because at the end of the day, everyone is looking in for a professional who has a solution-oriented mindset, rather than just passing the blame. This is not my thing. This is, let's say, a finance thing or another functions team. It's all about taking the onus, taking on leadership, having a problem-solving mindset, and more than that, having a solution mindset. Because you might be having a problem-solving mindset, but you should also have a solution mindset to end that problem which is recurring or occurring in the organization.
I'm glad you mentioned interviews, because I agree with you. Interview is also a networking opportunity. Even if this interview won't result into a job or into another interview, this is your chance to present yourself, to ask questions and demonstrate your knowledge and how well you know the subject and how passionate you are about it. And I know that interviews can be tricky. Interview at every level is different. When you meet your supervisor, it's more technical interview. When you meet the owner of the company, he or she may be screening you for the fit, for the cultural fit. It may be a shorter interview. Some processes are extremely short. It may take 3-4 days and then boom, you're hired, or it may be very lengthy in time and take months before a company makes a decision. So Siddharth, my question to you, I know you've been to a few interviews. What questions do you find the most difficult? What questions you're most worried about when you go for an interview?
I was pretty chill with my technical interviews because I was thorough with my technical skills, what skills I had. The only thing I was worried about was some situation based questions, which sometimes, they might ask a situation based questions which you've never been before in a situation like that. So, my just only concern was what situation would I say around that time, because you don't know what situation they might ask, right? You have to brainstorm very fast. Yeah, that's the only area that I found myself uncomfortable in, any situation which I might have not been in. So yeah.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned the situational questions. There is a way to answer them. You probably all know about STAR structure, but
Yep.
if it comes to the situation where you don't have real life experience to bring it up, it's fair to say that you didn't have that exact experience, but you can demonstrate your thought process, your attitude, your mindset, because most of the time that's what the company is looking for. They want to understand the logic behind your thoughts. They want to know what type of person you are, how you respond to certain critical cases. So definitely don't be afraid of not having enough experience. Make sure you understand the culture of the company. You are clear about their challenges, as Niraj mentioned earlier, so that you can come up with your solution in a way that they see that you are the right person for the job. So definitely do your research in advance. Learn as much as you can about the company, their website, their LinkedIn, everything that you can find on the internet. Take research very seriously so that you can at least tailor your answers if you don't have experience. Gauri, and what about you? What questions make you very nervous when you go for an interview? What type of questions are you the most?
I think before any interview, I do get nervous. Just, I think it's a human nature, maybe. But so far, I've not given as many interviews like as you all have whole experience with. But uh, as I already shared in my first, statement, that the most difficult question was about, the finance, what they said. But now when I just like when just Niraj told us about how logistics, how supply chain is the center of everything, now I can, literally correlate, and I can say, yeah, I should have said. So I think that is where, Siddharth just pointed out that when we don't have the experience in, the real life experience, and we do lack, or we just get nervous and we forget everything, like how should we answer. So that thing, I think we have to work on it, because that's what, in colleges and schools they can teach you on theories, but in practical world, if you don't learn, you cannot have that experience. And when you are applying for jobs, or like me, like I couldn't know those things, so I couldn't say anything, I fumbled out. So those things were like kind of difficult.
Yeah, Gauri, thanks for sharing that. Definitely asking good questions. If you are not clear about something, it may be a good idea to educate yourself before the interview. And then if you're not sure, ask questions to the hiring manager so that they can see that you want to learn, you're passionate about, you know a lot about their company. That's definitely a good sign. And I know we are wrapping up our conversation, and as you mentioned earlier, and Siddharth mentioned, soft skills are essential for success in supply chain. And I can tell tell you that absolutely is true. Because of it being a cross-functional role in supply chain, you have to be able to flex your communication when you speak with different departments within organization, with different personality types. And in supply chain, we have to influence. We have to make sure we are not just proposing change, we are capable of implementing that change. We can lead people who do not formally report into us. We may not have any right to tell them what to do, but we have to influence and make sure we deliver our ideas with their gain in mind. So speaking of soft skills, Niraj and Siddharth, Gauri, I would like you to kind of wrap your thoughts around and share your advice with those who are currently watching our conversation.
I think in terms of soft skills, what I would say is you need to understand the cultural nuance because Canadian landscape in terms of cultural nuance is quite different from Asia, let's say where I come from. So Asian landscape is totally different. North American is different. European, UK is totally different. You need to understand that first thing. Second thing is you need to understand how business works because there are some industries in Canada which are, I would say, not a monopoly, but there are hardly about 3-4 operators who actually command the attention of the entire industry. Retail, telecom are clearly good examples of that. So if you can't study the industry, study these companies. These companies will help you understand how the industry functions. And the second thing in terms of communication, what I would say is, if you are not the best, then learn from the best. So read books or read articles by supply chain thought leaders. For example, I read them a lot. Like it's in LinkedIn, I spend my money on buying books on, not the typical supply chain curriculum books, but I like reading supply chain books which are based on real life case studies. So something like Brand Desmith, he's a good author. Yossi Sheffi is a highly acclaimed name on the LinkedIn space. These are all supply chain thought leaders. So read articles by them because they know, they have been in the industry for long and they know how the industry is going through. And the third thing which I want to comment is in terms of understanding supply chain communication. So supply chain communication is changing now with the advent of supply chain 4.0 or industry 4.0. There are a lot of technologies which are coming in. So you should learn, at least, I'm not saying you should master them, but you should know what is happening. Specifically artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, blockchain, risk management. These are the things that you should know because 5 years down the line, these things will be mandatory. They are optional now because the world is trying to get through that with the pandemic. But I guess 5 to 10 years down the line, these things will be considered that you should be aware of.
I will tell you that recently I decided to do a mock interview with ChatGPT. I asked ChatGPT to interview me for a demand planner job. So ChatGPT asked me to upload the resume, and I said, well, can you create a resume for a demand planner? So ChatGPT generated a very decent resume for a demand planner. And then I asked ChatGPT to ask me questions as if that was my resume. And those questions were very decent. It even shared with me logic behind the interview, what sort of areas ChatGPT was screening me for: communication, critical thinking. So I think if AI is not part of your preparation for an interview, I believe it should be. It will give you the hard time and maybe it will increase your confidence. So Siddharth, I know before we discussed the ChatGPT AI, did you use that in your job search? And what advice do you have for your peers who are watching us today?
I think ChatGPT is in a gray area for me, simply because you can use it in good ways. You can build your resume through that, but I would not suggest that because, for example, like I said, that my roles, what I was doing, and what GPT gave, it was like a very general resume kind of thing, and it did not add what I was actually doing in my job, right? And coming on to the soft skills, I would say soft skills are pretty important in the industry. For example, the communication or cross-functional team building exercises, or cross-functional team communication, right? So one such example I would give is attention to detail. I think it's a pretty pretty good skill to have, and good communication.
Thank you, Siddharth. I agree with you. Attention to detail is important, even if you are doing VLOOKUP. If you are preparing for a forecast meeting with your sales team and you missed some, I don't know, you mixed the columns and you pulled up the wrong numbers, even those minor things can lead to major mistakes and reputation. Definitely, it's a stressful role, but attention to detail is essential for success and building positive reputation in the industry. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Gauri, what do you think is important? What skills you think are essential when it comes to soft skills? And what advice do you have for those who are watching us?
I think the main soft skill is you have to be very updated what is happening in the industry, because today our industry is changing, like, it's the spark right now, and you have to know what's happening. And it's not just about the Canada that you have to be updated about, because supply chain is something, it is connected all over the world, so you have to be very knowledgeable about what's happening, like, Red Sea attack and everything, the shipments are getting delayed. So you have to know these things. Like, I lost my touch for 3 months, and when I started everything again, I was like, oh god, 3 months have been, it felt like a year. So, and we saw something in COVID, that earlier supply chain was not, it wasn't in that spotlight, but after COVID it was in a spotlight, and it became the heart of each company. Like, they all put their biggest investment in their supply chain models. So you have to know what key areas are very important for the companies. You have to know, um, you know um, which are the areas you want to improve, so you can improve your soft skills accordingly. And it's just not like how you speak, how you, because I get it, everyone have their strength and weaknesses. There's that will remain constant for some time, but you have to know the areas to improve. So I think that is very important.
I agree with you. And it's not, communication is not just speaking, it's ability to listen, ask good questions, be a patient person, and understanding the person in front of you. I'm glad you mentioned the geopolitical situation, how global environment affects what we feel here in Canada. And as a recruiter, I can tell you that I see way less jobs available than we saw, let's say, a couple of years ago. The competition is fierce. The higher you get, the more important networking becomes. And of course, maintaining good relationship with your colleagues will also help you in the future, because you will need references. Your colleagues may be working in different companies in the future. So making sure that you are a decent co-worker, you support your colleagues, you have high emotional intelligence, and that will help you grow in the future within Canada or outside Canada. So I would like to thank Gauri, Siddharth, Niraj. I want to thank all of you for volunteering your time, coming up with ideas and helping our peers, our supply chain peers, to succeed and grow, to stay optimistic. I would like to thank all of you for your time. And if there is anything I can help you with, please feel free to reach out. I will be happy to assist.